Hello, I'm Carol Talbot, and in this episode, I'm back in conversation with Matthew Ryan, the developer of an energetic healing modality called gamma wave healing, and we're talking about death and crossing over. Hello again, Matthew, and we have an interesting topic today, an unusual topic maybe, because we didn't speak last week because you were honoring the fact that your father made his transition 1 year ago and you wanted to take that time to remember him. And, you know, we all have a different viewpoint on, I dislike the word death. I prefer to call it a transference of consciousness because we are, you know, here in this physical form. So I thought that would be an interesting topic to discuss, and particularly since you'd shared with me that you know a lot of people who have maybe relatives or friends who are making their transition, and maybe help people come to terms with that when you view it as a transition or as a transference of consciousness.
Yeah. Well, thank you. It's great to be here again. And last week was one of those kind of big life moments, you know, for myself and in my family. A year ago, my father passed away, and this was the first time that someone within my immediate family, you know, had passed away. And so, you know, and I'd never really encountered any of that before. And so going through that process last year was really a remarkable process. And then coming up on the 1 year anniversary, you know, it's actually maybe a bit of a relief, you know, especially for my mom, I think, and you know, but it definitely kind of a relief because you get through that period of time, like as my oldest sister had said in a family thread, you know, that it's the end of all of the firsts, you know, like the first birthday without dad, the first anniversary, you know, my mom and dad's anniversary, and, you know, all of those things, you know. And so we have this period of time that, you know, 1 year that is this marker. And I know, you know, all around the world, a lot of the cultures around people's transitions, there are these traditions of basically holding space and honoring those people that have crossed over for 1 year of time. And I know that is important where I live in the Southwest of the United States, with a lot of the Native American belief, the Navajo, et cetera. You know, that this is really kind of an interesting moment. And I had already been planning on honoring, you know, that relationship and my father's transition. And then my mom, kind of at the last minute, you know, the day before, she asked me if I would be willing to do some kind of a ceremony for my dad. And I said, well, yeah, I was like, yeah, that's great, because I actually was already planning on doing something in my own way. And so, yeah, it's really, you know, really a beautiful moment, and with, you know, with a happy, light heart on my side. And of course there's grief, you know, going through the remembrance. But you know, what I've come to understand about what happens when someone crosses over into that other state of consciousness, you know, that becomes it's a very interesting thing. You know, it's not quite what we say. And like you said, like death, you know, we use the word death as just a very, you know, that somebody died, you know, this is a death in the family. There's that kind of languaging that is just, you know, it's woven through the vernacular of our societies. And but I feel like there is that inherent assumption that means that there's an end. And what I've come to understand is, you know, this is not the death of the physical body is not the end of the being. And you know, and I'm sure a lot of people can probably relate to that as well. So, yeah, a very interesting moment, for sure. And I think it's really pertinent because a lot of people are going through transitions within their life, with various friends or family or loved ones, you know, that are leaving right now and transitioning right now. So.
Yeah, so I also know of other people who help people make that transition because, you know, it's one of the things that we have not been prepared for, of how to make a graceful exit. And I do recall one of my friends had the opportunity to be with her mother, and it was very interesting because everybody expected her mother to pass literally within days. And her mother would be in and out of consciousness, so to speak, or in and out of the room. And when they expected her to go, she said, "Oh, no, 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 my appointment's not till next Wednesday." And you know what, Matthew, that was exactly when she went.
Yeah.
That was
Yeah,
exactly
I mean, I think
when
that's
she went.
beautiful.
And,
Yeah,
and for my friend, she said it was a little bit challenging because she felt
sure.
for her it was a beautiful opportunity to spend that transition time with her mother and be there.
Yeah,
Whereas her sisters and brother perceived it in a completely different way.
yeah,
So I think it's also a time when we need to learn a little bit more about this, as I say, transference of consciousness, that we really are here in a physical form. And that I know that speaking to people who've had near-death experiences, remember
yeah.
one person said he was amazed that he could think, he could still think. There was still that, thought and consciousness
Yeah.
to ask questions and
I,
immediately get this download of information.
yeah, yeah. Those are all really good points, and I got to experience that for sure firsthand when my father had transitioned last year. It was kind of unexpected, although he had been in kind of poor health, for several years, diabetic and other things going on. But I had actually gone to visit my then partner, on a visit out in California, when I found out that he had gone back into the hospital. And I could tell from my sister that it seemed kind of serious. And so the two of us then flew out there to be with my family. And being there present, I'm really grateful for all of the experiences, all of the understanding that I had come to have, because through a lot of my life, I had a lot of fear around what it was going to be like when my father and my mother had made their transition. But I also, though, it's like, I feel like, I had all of this extra kind of bonus time with my father, because when I was 19 years old, I went through a very difficult period of time. I think maybe in our first interview, I had talked about that, where I'd had a knee surgery and was very depressed. And immediately after that had happened in the summer, my father and I went camping in Canada. And we were like up in the Algonquin Provincial Park, like canoeing on lakes in the middle of nowhere. And on our way in, my father had a heart attack. And he didn't really realize he was having a heart attack, but I realized what was going on. And and I prayed hard, during that moment. And he ended up surviving, and ended up having heart surgery after that. But we got 20 something years, maybe 25 years of kind of extra time, with him, where, because it was like a timeline divergence. There was another reality where I would have been dealing with literally hauling my father's dead body on a canoe out of the wilderness. Like, it would have been an extremely challenging moment. And instead, I got all of this extra time. And so when it came to this moment where he was making his transition, I feel like where I was within myself and in my perspective of understanding, I wasn't overwhelmed with the grief of the situation, and maybe in the same way as my other family members maybe had experienced. It was, everybody has their own experience, right? But going through that transition then, or before he actually transitioned, while he was still conscious, and he had a really beautiful transition, as beautiful as that situation can be. I mean, he was with his family, and when he made the decision to take himself off of this like life support equipment, then that he was medicated, like on a morphine and whatnot, and so there wasn't pain or that kind of a thing. But I was able to have a long conversation with him to share what my understanding is about what happens when the body dies and the consciousness leaves. And like you, I have two friends that have had numerous, actually one woman, she's had 3 near-death experiences, and the other one had 1 near-death experience. And a lot of what they had shared with me about what the consciousness does when it leaves the body and it's like liberated out of that physical form, a lot of that information coincided with what I've learned in working with clients when we occasionally do make a connection in with a loved one that has crossed over. And so being able to share that with my father, that understanding that the consciousness, the soul, the being that actually animates this entire experience of ours is an eternal expression of energy. It does not die. And so he was able to, I believe, I feel like, and from what he had communicated, he was at peace with the whole situation, and was able to eventually cross over while like in a dream state, and but that crossing over, it's really a remarkable set of experiences, that people will report that have had those types of near-death experiences, or other types of transcendental experiences with making a transition.
Now, because of the work that you do with clients and through gamma wave healing, I mean, you're very familiar when you're working with people, the different lifetimes that they've had, in whether it's in different time, space coordinates, on other planets, other aspects of themselves. So has that also changed your perception of crossing over, of this transference of consciousness that we hook into this whole soup of wisdom?
Yeah, for sure. I work a lot with these strands of energy that we would identify as being like related to other life experiences, whether they're past lives, future lives, multidimensional experiences, other non-human experiences, many things like that. And so that really has shaped the kind of the picture, or the framework of my understanding of consciousness. And where it would relate to the people that I'm working with, most of the people that I work with would probably identify themselves like as star seeds, or light workers, way showers of some kind, that are here helping this ascension of consciousness in the earth. And these people, many times, we're going to see many experiences that pop up in their field that are related to these other kinds of life experiences. And for many of these people, myself included, that they've had many experiences here on earth in preparation for the moment that we find ourselves in. And so there can be so much that this soul experiences, that this consciousness can experience. But when we're incarnated into these physical forms, there is this process that seems to kind of like either wipe or maybe hide the access into those other lifetimes, those other memories, those other wisdoms. And so there's a lot that factors in. And beyond all of it, even when we see something like you see a past life that is affecting somebody that was traumatic, maybe for a woman, like that they were a woman and they died in childbirth, or maybe they were a man and they were killed in a war, or an accident. I see actually lots of accidents where people like falling from horses and things like that. And so those traumatic experiences for the consciousness in that moment, it's a temporary kind of expression of the soul's energy. People move very easily maybe through all different types of experience. And this is one of the big things that I was really kind of shaping my understanding with the process with my father, is that when the consciousness leaves the body, or is no longer like tethered to a living body, you enter into this state of like timelessness, and that is like an ever-present moment. It's just like an eternal presence. And people that have had the near-death experiences, they all report in on some type of like a life review, it seems like, where they say like your whole life flashes in front of your eyes. And that's what I've come to understand, and I've kind of experienced in a secondary way through working with clients, that what will often happen when the connection to the body is gone, the consciousness enters into this state of eternal present moment where the life experience is essentially reviewed, and you will move through your life. People often report that they're having experiences from the perspective of the other person in their life, so like something, a memory comes up, and you're experiencing it from the point of view of your wife, not yourself, and so there's that type of a transition. But then when you reach that moment where the body has passed away, the consciousness can still go forward in time. But that again is that in time is this illusory situation, because the people that are left behind that are incarnated, my sisters and I and my mom, we go through this progression of it's a spiral, but it's like an apparent linear time progression. And my father's energy can check in salient moments as we progress through that period of time. We may feel his presence, we may communicate with him, but from his perspective, what I've learned is that is all occurring in like an instantaneous present moment, and there is no time. Like, he's not tethered to us for 20 years having these experiences of linear time. It's just it's a flash and an instant. And in my communication with my dad right after he had transitioned, I asked him, like, well, how are you doing? What's going on here? And he had communicated to me, like, you don't need to worry. Like, I've learned what I've needed to learn, and I'm going to be around, like a little bit of energy around, helping us out on our side. But from his side, that transition is already made, and it is moved on into some other form of consciousness experience.
Now, we often talk about, and you've mentioned the notion of past lives. And what always makes me curious, because we know there is only the present and you're experiencing everything in the now, but we to make sense of our world, we use a linear, past, present, future. But still, when you go for these sessions, people always talk about past lives. They never talk about future timelines. Although saying that, there's Daryl Anker who channels Bashar, and he says that Bashar is a future version of himself, that he's bringing in that wisdom. And I know when I meditate and sort of connect to other aspects of myself, the avatar, the rishi, the oversoul, I always think, from that perspective, from an oversoul perspective or an avatar with, cosmos consciousness or universal consciousness, all the wisdom must be there from that perspective to draw into this present moment. And I also, in the notion of past lives, I think of future lives and think, surely you would have left some clues, Carol. Surely you would, knowing what a nosy Parker you are, surely you would have, sprinkled a little hints or popped, a book here and there. And that's when maybe we recognize the synchronicities. But I wanted to ask you, because of the way that you tap into people, not just earthly incarnations, but in other star seeds or star families. Do you sometimes feel they're actually more futuristic? Because why would they have to be, start at the year dot zero and then move forward in linear time? Maybe our next lifetime is in an earlier time space reality, and then you start, your mind starts going, whoa, because it's all mixed up, and that makes us feel uncomfortable.
Totally.
A lot of us feel uncomfortable with so having this past, present, future gives us comfort when it's really not like that. Is that something you experience when you're bringing in aspects of people?
Yeah, absolutely. It's really funny. The first past life regression that I had ever had was in 2003. And so in the year 2003, I was already like pretty firmly on this path, but I was learning a lot. Like, there was a lot that was opening up to me. And in this past life regression, I went into a life that was earlier. It was like, I was young in the 40s and 50s, and was a farmer in Iowa, and I was a really good baseball player, and could have gone into like a professional rank, but I kind of stayed with the family farm, married my high school sweetheart, like had children, and then I passed away. It was like, it was like a very happy, totally like Norman Rockwell kind of life. And And but I passed away in 1978 from like a heart attack while lying in bed. But I, Matthew, was born in 1976. And so like that, it began like when I saw that, I was like, I died in 78. How is that possible? Like it began to scramble my mind, because I knew the reality of what I was experiencing, but it didn't match with the time. And so that you know, that's a really good point, because our mind and the way that society you know, entrains us to kind of function is with this linear progression. But you're absolutely right. Like what I see for myself, what I see with clients all the time, is that there are these aspects that our consciousness and our soul has had experience with, and it is all over the place in time, and it's all over the place even dimensionally as well, you know, where things begin to get hard to translate. But I remember then I began doing work with a different friend in 2009, doing the regression work. And one of the first regressions that we had, like I was taken back to Atlantis. So I was like 13,000 years in linear time in the past. And then another time we went 27,000 years into the future to recover. It was like a soul retrieval for an aspect of myself. And so when you begin to see these things, we really understand that you know, we've had so many experiences as consciousness embodied as human beings, and that consciousness it has traveled through a lot of preparation. I mean, I'm told personally that for me to be here in this moment of this major transition, the most exciting thing that maybe has ever happened, you know, through all of the universe, like there are so many eyes on us right now, you know, or perceptual, you know, things perceiving us right now. And in preparation for that, I'm told that somewhere between, like, you know, maybe on the low end would be like 650, on the high end maybe 1,000 incarnations, that all of which through all of different time is like focusing towards this moment, so that all of those different aspects, all of the wisdom and the experiences, all of the betrayals, all of the love, all of the healing, all of the dastardly deeds that we have participated in, it's like all of it is forming this cohesive picture. And again, there's also, I hear this caveat right now going, and that's just one way of understanding, you know, that's one
Yes.
lens of translation.
You often, with past life, hear people talk about, oh, they were, you know, this famous person, that famous person. And of course, we have this, you know, unified field or memory collective, the collective consciousness. Is that what we're tapping into? And then if that's the case, then can you imagine all the wisdom that we can tap into? Because my question here is, for what purpose would we really want to come back again and again and again and again, and, you know, have this veil of forgetting, which, you know, you have opened, that veil has opened for you. So you're beginning to remember the true history of the reason that we were seeded on this earth, and our purpose as to evolve and to reclaim who we really are, our true eternal self, rather than the finite life that we live, you know, to start reclaiming that. So that would also be, you know, are we really just tapping into a collective consciousness? And for what purpose really do we need to come back again and again and again? Which leads me a little bit round to where we are now. Are we really just on a prison planet? So that when we do make that transition of consciousness, while we think that we're transitioning and moving onwards and upwards, how come we keep coming back? Is it that we're really kept here and kept in this reincarnational loop? And that also leads me to see that many people, particularly in this day and age, are feeling confused of who they are and where they are. It's almost as if they bounce out and they bounce straight back in.
Yeah.
What's that about? And how have you come across people who, like, I'm not meant to be here like this, or in the wrong space and time? And as I said, then we go into, you know, transgender, transhumanism and all of that. And maybe this is the reason that there's so many people on the planet right now, because we know this is a pivotal time that we can make our true transition and transference of consciousness and get out of the prison planet.
Yeah. Yeah, those are all really good and pertinent questions right now. I believe that that there is, based on what I've seen in my sessions and what information that I've had access to, that there is something to that about the like prison planet kind of trap. People talk about these like consciousness traps or frequency traps, and I know that there's like there is like an angel of like death and forgetting or something. I forget what it's called, but like in Eastern traditions, there's like a supreme being that when you make that transition and that your consciousness gets kind of erased, and then you're like caught in a reincarnation cycle.
Yeah,
And
and then the veil of forgetting comes down again.
Exactly. So I believe that there's truth to that type of situation, where a lot of people that are here and are present alive in this world maybe have been in these kind of karmic loops where they're either going through and the experiences that they are creating and having in their life, maybe generating karma, which creates this like it's almost like a gravity or something that would keep people locked into that type of a cycle. What I've been told repeatedly in recent years is that situation is ending, so that there are opportunities that are rising right now for people, as we can be as present as we can be within our life experience, that we can kind of rebalance or maybe erase or iron out some of those kind of karmic bumps or those types of energies that would keep us locked into that type of a cycle. And so I really do see that those cycles are liberating right now, that they're being broken, or that and I don't know the mechanism. I could say that it's cosmic energy in some ways, that you may be influencing the soul. Maybe it's the different types of like frequencies that have come into the world through teachers or other experiences that might help break those chains. Outside of that kind of karmic loop, I do see a lot of people that kind of like myself, where seeing lifetimes where people are they're having these reincarnational cycles, but instead of being caught into a loop and into this forgetfulness, and you have to strive for 30 or 40 years or whatever to try to remember, the starseed situation seems to be very targeted, where people it's almost like a download of consciousness into a body, and then that's changing the frequency. And maybe when they die, there's another, like they recycle back and then come back in, but there's not the same type of like a attachment or identification with that like karmic prison planet loop, if you will. So it's an exciting time, and that's not even going into the multidimensionality and like the timelines that are all kind of collapsing in and being woven together into a cohesive experience right now. So yeah, it's a remarkable time as we're beginning to remember and we're beginning to understand. And I think a lot of that, like you said, like why are we coming back here? And are there nuggets that I can bring from those other aspects of self? And I really see that a lot of people are making those kind of conscious connections and understanding, and I'm seeing it in their energy field over time, over the last couple of years, but especially now. It's like a lot of those extraneous experiences and other energies, they're all coming back in, and it's again like a soul retrieval in a way, recovering more and more of our energy, more of our sovereignty within this experience. And things I think are about to get very exciting in that regard.
Yes, there seems to be a lot happening, and we started these sessions talking about solar flares, and I know there's solar activity. We can certainly talk about that another time. And so what you're saying is you believe there's a shift in that we're not going to be stuck in this eternal Groundhog's Day of another life, down comes the veil again. And can you imagine if, we could tap into a morphogenetic field that allowed us to really remember who we are, our true purpose, our real history, and that a time when we knew we were part of many other civilizations, many other species, many other planets, rather than feeling, this great divide this, we're single, there's nobody else around. So as we finish off today, what was nice was you talked about celebrating, the time that your father, a year to the day when your father made his transition. So what message would you like to leave people with today, where maybe they have people who are about to make their transition or have recently made their transition, that will help them maybe understand this from a different perspective, or find some peace?
Well, yeah, that's a good question. And first off, I think that everybody's experience, everybody, and even including people who haven't lost anybody recently, or who don't have people that are about to make that transition. I think that everybody right now, we need to have a really open and allowing understanding, because everybody on earth right now is going through a massive change, whether they recognize it consciously or not. The energy that is affecting this world is affecting the entire world. Nobody is escaping this type of energy. And so, we're all having this incredible experience right now, and it's very personal, and so I would say that my experience of as the grief kind of moved through me very rapidly when my father transitioned. And I was able to have that experience with a level of joy and like understanding. And I know that that's definitely not everybody's experience. Everybody's experience is valid as they move through this type of process. But I would say, though, that the transitions that are occurring right now, it seems like, if you observe these things in community, like I live in a very small community, it's about 20,000 people. And I've been here for 18 years. So you see people, life transitions, different things that happen over time. And there seem to be waves. There are like these waves of transition that kind of rise and fall, where a lot of people that I know of in some way maybe will transition like in a window. And it feels like we're in another one of those windows right now, and maybe have been since the beginning of before this virus situation, and and continuing as the energies are climbing. And so, for people that are going through this moment, it's really an incredible experience. And there's so much hope, and there's so much ease around my heart, and understanding that although the energy of the consciousness of this being has transitioned, and that they're no longer with us in this way that is so intensely wonderful of having a physical form. And but through that transition, there is healing, and there's like understanding, like my father, that my father's consciousness no longer needs to struggle with the difficulties of his physical body. And instead, it was like liberation. And in the communication that I've had with him, which is now kind of few and far between, it really, like, that energy really transitioned. He still comes in when I go fishing and I'm out in nature and things like that, a little bit. But that transition is into a state of existence, into the return into the source field, the return to God, the return to heaven, what a nirvana, whatever we want to label that experience culturally. It's something that we in our bodies, we can't really understand unless you've had that near-death experience. And the people that I know, like these near-death experiences, there is what comes on the other side of the physical form is exquisite. And
yes, they all, I think virtually everyone you speak to on an NDE says it really is a gift, a real gift, and come back and want to share that with others, so that we don't all be in fear when either, we're faced with our mortality, or when we have our loved ones faced with our mortality. So thank you as well for sharing, that very personal and beautiful experience that and feeling that you have with us today. Thank you.
Yeah, of course. And like, as you said, it's a celebration of consciousness, and that really in my choice of what I did to honor my father, I went fishing, which is one of my meditations. It's one of my joys, to go and to stand alone in the river and to be a part of that flow and to look around and constantly seeing this extraordinary beauty and like seeing an osprey. Like I had an osprey, a big, it's an eagle that eats fish. Basically, it's not an eagle technically, but it's a large bird, that comes in and eats the trout in the river. And there was an osprey hanging out with me, and the synchronicities of the beauty. Like my mom and dad had a dog named Daisy, and when I was and my dad loved dogs, and so we were, as I was like moving through the river, going, okay, where am I going to sit to actually do this ceremony? And I saw this tiny little pile of wild daisies on a little island in the middle of the river, and I was like, thanks, Dad. There's the place. And so it's a celebration, and at least for me and in my perspective. And even though that there's grief, and even though grief rises, there can still be incredible joy. And that's, I wish that for everybody as we're going through all these incredible moments right now.
I love that, because I feel that many people miss the signs within their grief. They miss the daisies, the nature, the signs that are gifted to you, that consciousness is still with you.
Yeah.
So thank you so much for sharing that with us today, Matthew, and enjoy your day and keep warm, because I believe you've got the first snow there.
October 13th, and there is snow on the ground. So it's a little chilly outside. So I will do that. I'll button up. Thank you so much, Carol.
Thank you.